Welcome to Read Between the Wines, where two bibliophiles discuss our love of the written word from cover to cover and cork to glass. Pour yourself a beverage and join us for this week's episode. Cheers! All right, well, I suppose we should probably talk about the changes, the difference, what's going on. Yes. So welcome back to Read Between the Wines, and we are not together.
We are separate. I don't know if you're right there, but you are on my screen.
We'll be somewhere. Yeah.
Yes. Welcome to my little reading nook. Right. And this is fun because I get to wear all the ridiculous stuff that I wouldn't necessarily pack because it takes up too much room. So we're wearing rainbow sleeves today.
I love your rainbow sleeves. I love the colors on that. That's so awesome, as I'm literally just in black, as usual.
That's okay. I figured because all my books in the back, like, they're all black. Like, I tried to do, like, the cutesy stuff, and I'm like, that's just what that's where I'm at in my life.
Are those ones that you've all read, or is it a mix?
So the bottom shelf that you can't see is the ones I have read. I keep them down there. Actually, that's a lie. I've read all of those. So yeah, they're interspersed actually.
Nice. That's how I am. I'm finding an issue right now as I read with the fact that I'm just like, I have a pile of read books and I have a pile of like to be read books. Like it's my TBR, but it's also like I put my TBR on a shelf to make it look nice. But now I have TBR in front of my TBR.
TBR is everywhere. Like it is all the books in my house. There's no like actual listing. It is just all the books in this house.
Right. And we're talking today actually about the opposite of a TBR.
Yes.
Today we're talking about the books that we wish we could read for the first time again.
Can you imagine? Like this sounds like such a crazy concept that we're like, we have extensive TBRs. Extensive. It's like all the books in the world are on my TBR. And yet there are several that I'm rereading. What? Why? How can you even fathom that?
Right. And not necessarily that I want to reread every time, but I wish that I could, like, after reading it and being done with it and like closing the book and taking that like final book breath, which we all know what the final book breath is, right? Where you just kind of like hold it for a second. I feel like even having finished it, just being able to experience it for the first time again is something you won't get back. And I go into all of my book reads wanting it to be that way, right? Like I want all of my book reads to be a book I wish I could read for the first time. But there are certain ones that even though I've read them however many years ago, I still recommend them. I still think about them. I still, but I know that reading them again isn't going to change anything for me.
Right. And so for me, the level of like, okay, this next book better hit this feeling. It's like you're always searching for that feeling again.
Exactly.
Like, if I could just go back and experience it again.
It's almost like a book drug. It's like I don't do illicit substances. I read books. I need that on a t-shirt.
Trademarked.
Right? I don't do illicit substances. I just read books. I mean, it can be its own thing. It's its own addiction, honestly.
Mm-hmm.
And good, better, and different.
And side note, I think it's two addictions. Buying books is one.
Okay.
Reading them is the other.
Oh gosh. Okay. I always say, I'm like, I don't think I have a vice. Like there aren't a lot of things that I do in excess except read. So I think my vice is reading, but I just consider it a healthy habit. So I don't think, I think I have a vice. I figured out my vice. That's crap.
It's a
not even an exciting one.
You are bettering yourself. You're not harming anyone.
Paint it in a kind light if you must. And just to be clear, I'm not searching for a vice. I don't need one. I just...
No, clearly you have one now.
I have one that I don't need to worry about any longer. So that's fine.
Exactly. We don't need any more.
No.
We're good with this one.
What is one of the books on your wish you could read again list? Oh, she has it. Oh my gosh. I haven't read that one yet.
Circus. You have not.
Mm-mm.
I have already given you a stack and I did not want to overwhelm you.
No, but I think you gave it to Missy.
My sister did. Yes. And she read it and she enjoyed it. So we'll see. I'm going to see her this weekend. I wonder if she brought it
I think
to
she's
pass
planning
along
to
to you,
I think
which
she's
is
planning to
weird.
bring it to pass because she's just going to bring it to
Okay.
California to bring it back to the East Coast.
Yeah, yeah. So that's happening. So the Night Circus. This was an incredible read. It is dark magic. Apparently it's romance. I
Oh,
did not know that. I think it just escapes me because that's not the theme that I'm focusing on. Um, but it is beautiful. It is so detailed. It feels like it's being painted right around you. Um, and it's so easy to get lost in. So I love this book, and I remember finishing it. It was years ago. I remember finishing it, and I took my book breath, and I was like, I don't want this to end. This is amazing. So I'm like, oh, I'm gonna go see if she has any other books, like what other books she has. This was it.
that was it.
Like one. And I was like, no, I need this. And just a few years ago, she did come out with another one, The Starless Sea, which was also as beautiful and detailed. And I'm like, okay, I need you to put forth more books. Like, this is incredible. So I recommend it to everyone, but I really do wish that I could step back and read this one and
Just
experience
do
this
it one
one
more time.
again, just
Right.
without the knowledge of what is happening, just to be able to be lost in that world.
Right. I think
It's
it's so
fantastic.
interesting when a book takes you to a place and you're like, "Oh, I'm really enjoying the story." And then all of a sudden something happens or you could have like guessed at the theme of what was going on, but it happens in a way you didn't expect or I don't
Yes.
necessarily want to be surprised. I want to be
Yeah.
I want to be courted by my book. Do you know
That's
what I mean?
exactly
Like
what this one was. There was no like, I don't need a massive plot twist.
no.
I just want a story I can get lost in. And that, chef's kiss. It was fantastic.
See, and that the passion for a book like that makes me want to read it. And I think in a previous episode you had mentioned that like somebody was like, "Oh, this book is on a list of things that like you should never read," and you were like, "Absolutely not."
I was like, no, I will fight the person who put that on that list. You tell me
Exactly.
who said that.
But it's because you
Yes.
have that passion for it because it moved you in such a great way,
Yes.
and I
Yes.
absolutely love that. Mine is actually not fiction. My first one that's like wish I could read again,
Interesting.
and to completely throw everything I've ever said into question, it was also an audiobook.
Oh,
So I don't like
okay.
right, we know that I don't do
We've
audiobooks.
taken
We
a
just
left. Is this a
right?
left?
We've taken something. We've taken a road that's not even on Google Maps quite yet. So I don't do audiobooks typically ever. I've started my first if I ever did them, they were nonfiction. I don't know why I thought that would be easier. It is not. I've started my first fiction one, which is actually also a vampire story, which I didn't recognize until like she started reading and I was like, "Oh, the monsters are vampires. Great." So I'm currently in the middle of a fiction audiobook with an author or with a voice actor, a narrator that comes highly recommended. So I was like, okay, we can get in on this. But this one was an audiobook that I listened to when I was driving. And I was driving
Okay.
like 6 hours or something, and it wasn't super long, but it came on a recommendation, and it is High Magic by Damien Eccles.
Yes, you
And
have
yes,
recommended this to me,
I have, which is funny because we've recommended, of course, we
and I
will,
have not
right?
read this one yet.
If it's my favorite, if it's our favorite books or books that we
Yeah,
really enjoy or want to read again, of course we're going to recommend them. But this one had to
yes.
do. This is an author who was actually on death row because he was accused and convicted of a heinous crime that he did not commit and has since been released. But it's about the way that he kind of not I don't want to necessarily say bends, but creates or defines or manipulates his world into a place that is something that he can enjoy and the things that he wants to have happen. And has to do with manifestation, it has to do with the way that you use your energy, it has to do, so it's a whole bunch of all those different things. Magic in this one is spelled with an ICK, so it's that kind. But it
Okay.
was a really like it was just a really good book, and I think the reason I liked it so much is that it was narrated by him. Like
Oh,
he
nice.
the author also
Yes.
narrated it, so you could hear like where he wanted the
Get a
emotion to
little
be
bit
put into
more.
things. You
Yeah.
definitely got the story of like this is his book. So
Yeah.
I really enjoyed that one, and it definitely kind of helped me just think differently, right? Because I feel like I surround myself with very similar topics, ideas, and themes, which we all do. So sometimes it's nice to get outside of that and see
Yeah.
what somebody else like. I will tell you, a convicted felon is not typically a previously convicted felon is not typically the type of person that I'm like, oh, I would love to read a book by you.
That
Like
you would
you,
align with
right,
too, right?
right, or even to have put some themselves in a situation where they'd be there and that would be the outcome, and like all of a sudden it's, you know what I mean? So I
Hmm.
was surprised. I gave it a try because I was like, all right, came highly recommended. I will try it, and then I ended up liking it, and I was like, well, crap. Now I also like this book to a point that I wish I could hear it again. And I can't,
Interesting.
right? And so I wish, and I think for that part, I wish I could hear it again for the first time because it didn't make me fall asleep, which was great because I was driving. And it also held my attention to the point that I was like, oh, here are certain things that I can go back and reference, which I don't always do.
Do you think you would have a different experience if you read it next?
I don't know. Which brings up the interesting topic I've seen so many people talk about is that often they have the audiobook that they're listening to, but they're following along in the reading. Like they have the physical book
Yeah.
too. And I'm like,
Yeah.
how? How?
How are we
Like
doing
that would
this?
be cool, but also what if they read slower than I do and I want to go faster and now they're behind me and now like I don't people who do
There's a
that
lot.
are
Yes.
like a special kind of like brain people because I don't know that I
Yeah.
could do that.
Yeah. I
I think it's
don't
cool.
know that I could do it simultaneously. I don't know.
No, but I
That'll
think
be
that
another
people do it
episode. We'll try.
right. What maybe we should I'm like mouthing along with them, but it might also help with like voices and things like that. Like the character that
Name
I'm
pronunciations.
right, the character that I'm listening to right now, like she's got apparently a British accent. Who knew? Who knew? Would never have known because it's a
It's
made up
not what
world.
you gave her.
No, it definitely is not. No, but I digress. But that's one of the ones that, and it surprises me that my first book of like, I wish I could read this one. I wish I could hear this one all over again is nonfiction because that's very much not who I am. Actually, all
Right?
three of mine that I have that I would recommend, I don't think any of them are my typical like, here's what I recommend on a daily basis, which is so weird.
Interesting. I also have three. Funny that we
Oh,
came up
good,
with that many. I'd be curious
good,
to see
right?
if any of these overlap.
Weirdly, I don't think they will. But what's your
So
second? Tell me your next.
I was like, oh, I'm so excited. I can show my books now.
Right?
So keeping in the magic theme, big magic.
Oh,
I know
okay,
we've
that
talked
one we
about
do
this
love.
one.
Yes.
I know we've talked about this one, and I do reread this one
Yes.
yearly, but I do wish I could like read it again without knowing because the aha moments, the epiphanies, the simple ideas that just explode in your brain. I I mean, as you reread it, different things will pop up and
That's fair.
different things that you didn't hear before, but they are not as big of explosions as they were the first time because I remember just being so enthralled with this book and reading it. I think we were in the car and I read it on a full Saturday, like cover to cover, fully.
Nice.
And I'm not a car reader. I'm
No.
not like that's just not how I operate. But this book just held me so captivated. So while I do reread it, I wish I could reread it without the knowledge
Right.
that I have. But then also, like, it you get something new every time you read it.
Yeah.
So,
Do you know how many
it's
times
kind of one
you've
of those weird
reread it?
4 or 5.
So do you find something different based on where you are? Like in life at that point? 'Cause like
Yes,
over the last 5 years, we're different people, right?
we're
And so
completely different.
I wonder because I read it for the first time last year. I'm planning to read it again here, like, as soon as I get one. I usually have a limit of two at a time. I try two at a time.
Yes.
And so I have my two right now, accidentally. I have my two. And so once I finish one, I will pick that one up again. But I just wonder when I read it again, if because I'm at such a different place than I was last year, will
Something else will
different
make
things stand
sense.
out? And what will
Yes.
my previous little notations, will they still hold the same resonance that they did a year
Yeah.
ago?
Or will you just read right past those because that's already been, brought in, lesson learned, moved on, like, and now you're on something else. Like, what is that going to look like? That's why I love this book and rereading it. So I'm very excited to hear what happens on your second read through.
But you said you do find different things every time, almost every time.
And I think it's exactly like you said, it's because you're in a different space. So now other things are going to pop out to you based on where you're at.
That's fair, I suppose.
Yes.
If we must grow, I suppose we shall
We will
grow
grow
upward.
as a team, as a
We
pair.
shall
Let's
change.
go. Yes.
That's a good one though. I do love high magic, and I've also recommended it. Right, it's become one that you
Hmm.
recommended to me, and now I recommend to other people. Where I'm like, no, this is a good one.
This is a good one. This is a good like toe dip into, I would say, like into a self-help-ish without being like you're doing this wrong and we're
Right.
cramming it down your throat and you need to change. Like it's like, oh, surprise. Here are all
Here's
these
some nuggets.
things. Yeah, pick at them if you will.
And I think
Yes.
this book definitely hits the right balance of about the author and nuggets of wisdom.
Yes.
Because I think there are some books that are all, like you said, all about like, you've done life wrong, start over. And then there are other books that are like, this is my specific personal experience and
Yes.
I'm just
This is
telling
how
you in hopes that it helps you, but I'm really just talking about me. This
I'm just
one,
really
I
talking
think,
about me. I hate those.
right. Me too. I
I
try to
hate
love them.
those.
There's one that's kind of like that I do like. It's not on my must read, like have to read again, but it's one that I like. But it definitely changed some things for me. So I'm not going to knock it, but it definitely was. There are a few times where I was like, okay, enough about you.
Not
You're
you.
writing to the
How
rest
do
of
I
us,
fix me?
and not even about me, but just like give me some actionable strategies. Like, but that's
Yes.
also a me thing where I'm like, I just want something to do. Like, tell me, so give me
Tell me
something
what
to
to
try.
do.
Yeah,
Just
give
tell
me
me what
something
to
to
do.
try just to see if it will work for me. Because I love that it worked for you, but also like that doesn't mean it's going to work for me.
Also,
Doesn't mean it's going
ew.
to work for everybody.
Tell me how I can apply it to my life.
Just help. The part of self help is help. You're the help
Right.
of myself.
You're the help of myself. Don't expect me to do it.
Mm-mm, I can't do it all. That's why I'm reading the book.
Exactly. Exactly. Okay.
Yes.
What's next on your list?
My next book is one that God, I love it so much. And I think I'm going to mention one of them here. And then in a future episode, I have another one of theirs to mention. So keep a pin in this one. But,
Okay.
but My Dear Hamilton is the next one. And it
Okay.
is historical fiction. And it's basically about Eliza Hamilton and her life and how she grew up and her relationship with Alexander and her like it's literally goes from like when she's a child and like growing up with her dad in politics and like what that looked like. And so the authors definitely written by two women, the authors definitely took a lot of information from like the letters that she wrote and different things that were written about her from her sisters and all of this stuff. So it's hard to in some cases to decipher like which is exact truth and which is like hearsay or conjecture or whatever it might be, but there's so much in it. And as a person who actually loved the Hamilton play, like Hamilton play, Hamilton movie, like the whole thing, love it all, love music. It's actually, fun fact, it's actually what I put on when I'm trying to focus really hard for work and I have like if I have a big proposal due or if I've got a really big project, like I will put that soundtrack on. If I have a really long car ride, I will put that soundtrack on and it will like I don't have to think. Like I just know what's coming
Calms
next.
your
I know what the
system.
yeah, right? So
Yep.
being able to read this book and kind of match up with some of the stuff from Hamilton was so crazy to be like, "Oh, and the timeline very different from the timeline in Hamilton. Still around the same time, but there were like more years between this, less years between this." Like so it was really cool to see from her perspective what was going on at that time. And I also love that
Yeah.
time in history. Like that section of our historical past is something that I'm always interested in. And so
Hmm.
being able to hear about it from, she was also like, as she was a mother and losing a child and like all the things that went on with her life and even beyond his, because he at some point, not, not going to ruin anything because the very first song of the play tells you that he dies. Um, you know what I mean? No,
Spoilers.
no spoil. It's not a spoiler. Um, but talking about what happened after that and the work that she did and like some of the conversations that she had through letters and there was a lot that was lost
Yeah.
because she got upset, you'll find out why, and burned a whole bunch of her stuff and was like screw it, like no one gets to know. And so there are a lot of letters lost from her side.
Interesting.
Yeah, and so it was really cool to just read that, like I said, from her perspective, because she was more influential than I think a lot of people realize because there's so much focus put on the founding fathers, not on
Hmm.
their significant others or their families.
Their support
So,
systems, like
yes.
who saw the other side of
Yeah.
all of that and have a different, I don't want to say a different opinion, but
Yeah.
like you get a different side of the story, right?
Yeah.
And that
Yeah.
like just kind of helps fill it in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, you get to know how much of it was, there's a lot of talk about like Hamilton and Madison and how much work they did together. She was there. She was there and she was helping. Like she was editing. Like there are certain things that you just don't recognize that she had a hand in.
Yeah.
And so
That's very
there's so
cool.
much in it. So My Dear Hamilton is the second one, and part of me wants to read it again, but I know it won't. It's not going to change the story,
No, because yeah, you
right?
already
Because I already know
know.
it, and I loved
Yeah.
learning it so much that I will tell you, I regularly look for these authors to see if they've written something else in that time period. Regularly, like
Interesting.
probably quarterly. I'm like, anything else? Like,
You got
and
anything?
I've
Yes.
right. I've stopped myself from being like you did with Night Circus. I've stopped
Yeah.
myself from being like, excuse me, tap tap. I'm gonna need more.
Hi, I need
Might
another
I
book. If we could get
suggest
on that.
Might I suggest these people? Could you write something about them?
I've got a whole list for you.
Right? Would love to
Don't
learn
tell
more
me you're
about.
stuck with no ideas.
Right? Give me
That's,
like Cleopatra's
I've had
brother next or something. I don't know.
somebody. It could be a
The younger
throwaway
one.
if you feel like it. Just
Right?
something.
Just something. Just and the way they wrote it was really nice. So that's one that I do have on my shelf. And every time I look at it, I have like a little pitter patter in my heart where I'm like, oh, it was so good. And that's
Oh,
one that
I
I
love
won't
that.
I won't
I've
share that one,
actually
but I'll buy
seen
a new
that
one.
one. I
Have you?
have seen that one in my used Endeavor. Wait, used Endeavor? No. I don't know. When I'm searching through used bookstores, I don't know where I was going with that.
I recommend picking
I
it up.
have seen it, and it makes me think of you. And I didn't realize that this was one that you would want to read
Oh,
again.
heck
And I'm like, I bet she would enjoy that one because I know you like historical fiction.
yeah.
So I'm like, I bet she would really enjoy it, but you already did. So maybe
I
next
did.
time I see it, I will pick it up
Yes.
and
You
we will
can
try
read
it
the one
because
that I
that's
have while you're
not my
here.
favorite genre.
No?
Like, I feel like, side note, side tangent, I feel like I avoid anything early.
Do you?
Yeah, because it's almost like I can't place it or like I can't understand
Oh, okay.
the time,
Right.
right? So it's like I can't resonate with a character who doesn't have electricity and like
Fair.
has to wake up and wake up with the sun and go to bed with the sun and like because like that's just so which is so crazy because I hear myself saying this. I'm like, but also I read about vampires and
Yeah, but they have electricity.
but they have electricity and so I can so it's easier to imagine, but it's just wild to me. I will pick up a book and I'm like, well, this looks interesting. And it's like in early 1919. And I'm like, nope. And I'll put it down. Like, this is just not what I gravitate towards. So
Which
it's
funny
very interesting.
because I'm very much where it's like in the year,
Yes.
2178 and I'm like, "Oh, absolutely not." I'm like, "No, thank you." Because but if I see 1919, I'm like, "Oh, I can tell you what was happening like in the world at that point." Right?
Yes.
This one picked up in literally 1931 and I was like, "I'm in. I'm so in. I know
See,
exactly where we
yeah.
are in the world. I know what we're doing. Like, I know what's about to happen. Like, and I think that's kind of why I like it because it feels concrete to me. Where I'm like,
Oh,
I know, like, you can tell where the mindset is, right?
yeah. Yeah.
So, and
I don't know
that
my
will,
history very well, so
that's the only thing I do know,
maybe
right?
that's
I
why.
don't know other things. I know history ish.
I know history.
I know history and I know books, and that's about it. All right, what's your third?
Okay. So speaking of things I can't wrap my mind around,
Oh, no.
when I got this book, before the coffee gets cold,
Oh my gosh, I'm so glad that you're bringing this one up. Okay, go.
I so actually I did not pick up this book. I saw it and moved on. My husband actually picked it up, and I had picked up a couple others, and we got home, and I always pull the stickers off of them, like all the little Target stickers and all the things. So I was pulling the sticker off, and I was like, that's a little one. Like, it's not going to take me that long to read. Like, it's not extensive. And so I was like, maybe I'll just read it real quick before he gets to it because he was finishing another book. And so I read this one and did not realize it was about time travel.
Right. There's
Had
nothing
no
on there that
idea.
like says that. Like the front page does not tell you that. The cover will.
No, but it just felt like a heartwarming story. So
Mhm.
I get into it. And it turns out it is time travel. And with time travel, the rules are not set. So whoever is building the story is the one setting the rules for what can and can't happen, how things work, because none of us know, right? Like
Right.
it's just whatever, however you want to define it, you define the rules in the story and you tell the story. So the rules that they gave, immediately I was like, nothing can come of this. Nothing can happen based on the rules that they've given.
Right.
There's just no way for anything to change, for anything to happen. This book follows four different people on their little time travel journey. The feels of this book are incredible. And it's the kind that you're sobbing. And in the same breath, face, all of it, you're like, you have to read this. You're like, it is killing me,
But
and you
also
need
look
to
at it.
experience it.
Right?
You
All
know,
right. I'm going to tell you something.
you have it on the list too.
It's not on my list, but it's here because I literally
Okay.
finished it, right?
Yes.
And you had recommended it, so I was like, I'm going to try. I didn't get my sticker off yet, but it is an actual sticker, not a pretend sticker. Thank goodness. I hate when they print
Good.
stickers on there. Don't do that.
Yes.
But you suggested this one, and I went to the store and saw it, and I was like, oh, they have this one and four others,
Yes,
which I
it's a whole
purchased,
series we found
right?
out.
So I now own the whole series. I've only read
You're
this
the
one because I
proud
finished it
owner.
like. Oh, look, there's the back. There's three more in the back.
Yep.
Um, I read it like 3 days ago. I want to say I finished it 4 days ago, whatever it is. So good. And so like I just love like the filling feeling.
Yeah,
Right? It
it's
just
so
feels like
heartwarming. It's
filled
wholesome.
everything. It is.
Yes.
And that's not normally like not that I've read unwholesome things, but it's not My Dear Hamilton. It's not, the
No.
dark romance that I'm listening to. It's not fantasy. It's not any of those things. It's good-natured time travel that's not kitschy. It's not
No.
like it's
It
believable.
was
You
very
know what I mean?
human. Very
It was
human.
very much like, "Oh, this is interesting." And they answer the questions that they need to have answered as
Yes.
far as like why it works the way
Within
it
the
works.
rules. And then I was like, oh,
Oh,
it
right.
does work. Like,
Yes. And it so works. So I honestly, it took everything in my little power and my little raccoon hands not to pick up book number 2 and be like, just start it right now. Because I was like, I just wanted to let this one marinate for a little bit.
yes.
It's like it was a little, it's not heavy, but it feels
It's not
emotional.
heavy, but
No.
it is very emotional. Yes.
Right. And I will tell you, under separate circumstances, when I didn't have an audience of humans in my house who were chatting with me while I was finishing it, I feel like I probably would have had a bigger response to it, which is why I'm excited to read the next one. And I think maybe for the next one, I read it at nighttime when everyone else is
Yeah.
asleep,
Yes.
when it is quiet, because it's definitely one that I wanted to like sit and cozy with, which I did with certain
Hmm.
parts of it. But when I finished it, I will say, it was the
It
other
was,
side, but it was
yeah.
also very much like, oh, wow, I didn't know we were getting into that.
Yeah. And fun
So,
fact, I had a gift card to Barnes and Noble, and I went and we poured over all the books, and I was touching all the ones that I was considering, and I stumbled across the table that had all of these on
yeah,
it.
yeah,
And so I did pick up the second one, and while we were there was this girl, and she kept like,
peeking.
yeah, because it was the table sat, but it wasn't just out in the open. It was kind of near another shelf, and so it was kind of hidden.
Right.
But they were all laid out, and like we were standing there looking at them all, talking about it, and she kept like coming by and kind of looking at it. And Greg was like, "Hey, are you interested in?" And she was like, maybe like, and we were both like, do it, like get
We are now
into
your
it.
book buddies. Just listen to
They did
us.
not have book one on the table
Oh no.
because she was like, well, which one? And we were like, well, because we were looking for book two, and we were like, well, we have this one's book two. Here's the order. We kind of told her about the order, told her how amazing the story was, and we were like, but book one is not here. And she was like, well, I'll get book two. So she got book two, and she was like, I will ask. and see if they have book one. She was like, because that sounds amazing. And it
Oh,
was
good.
just, it's so cool when you can connect with people like that
Yeah.
and to be able to explain something in a way that conveys words are hard. And I don't know why this isn't working right now, but conveys in a way to someone else like, you have to do, like, you will not regret
Right.
this book. And I remember the feeling of going into it and being like, this isn't possible. There's no way anything's going to change. There's nothing. And just coming away from that going, holy shit,
Oh, God.
what a story.
Right.
So, yeah, that's the one I wish. I wish I could experience. So I'm very excited to see what happens in book two because it's not like they are standalone.
Yeah, you could
It's
read
just kind
each
of
little
like,
story by itself.
yeah,
They
yeah.
go
So you,
together, but you read them by themselves.
exactly. So I'm very curious to see if if the second one gives me the same feels, if
Right.
it still hits the same way.
Right. And I love your note about it's cool to talk to somebody and be like, hey, I want to recommend this to you, relative stranger, absolute
Right?
stranger. That I'm,
Right?
but the fact that something has moved one enough, like has moved you enough to be like, hey, I'm gonna put my opinions on the line here for you because I feel
I'm
so
going to talk
strongly
to a
about this.
stranger
Right? Well, that's also
because
the
I
thing.
don't. I
Because I don't talk to strangers, and since I don't talk to
don't
strangers, this
talk
is a
to
big
strangers.
deal.
This is huge. So, you know, if I talk to you and I don't know you, it means something.
It means that unless we're on Threads or Instagram, it means
Exactly.
if I'm talking to you in person, like if I have to look you in dead in your eyeballs, you know I mean it. That is a good one though, and I'm so glad you mentioned it because, like I said, I literally just finished it,
Yes.
and I finished it, and I even did my little like stampy thing. That's
You're
next.
like, oh yeah,
I was like,
claimed.
this is one. This is my book.
Yes.
I'll keep this one. My third goes from your heartwarming story to absolute tragedy. So just so
No.
you, just so you know,
No.
we're back. And it would like again because there are so many books that I love, and like I said, none of the ones I picked were my usual. Right? I guess they're my usual, but not my usual for like light, happy, heartwarming, whatever. The
Yeah.
last one I picked was actually the Tattooist of Auschwitz.
Oh. I
Right?
have this book because you told me about it, and I got a couple pages in, and I was like,
I warned you.
I am not in the headspace for this. Like,
It
I cannot.
it's
So
hard.
I'm, tell me more.
It's so
Tell me
it's a
more.
hard book. I mean, just
Oh, yeah.
the literal title tells you that it's
Yeah.
hard, and it's because the gentleman who's at the center of this story. There are so many stories to be told, but at the center of the story, at a concentration camp in in Germany, and it is his job to tattoo the numbers on all of the new people that come in. That is his job. But you follow him through the story of things that he discovers and some of the perks that he gets and the things that he doesn't get and the things that change like it's an entire story of him at the center but so many other people within that and the way that things have changed and even though it was a time of absolute heinous humanity, there are still pieces of it that you find for hope and you find for connection and you find for family and you find for like all these different things despite the sadness that's happening. And so I will tell you this book actually I read this book and then the next like day off I had, I went to the Holocaust Museum in DC by myself, which was probably the best move because I don't recommend
Yeah.
doing that like on a group thing unless you all are ready for it because I will tell you I'm not ready. My oldest has asked if he can go, and my answer was no. It's like
Yeah.
maybe in middle school you're not going like I can't take you right now.
Yeah.
It's too hard. But it was the thing that pushed me over the edge to be like, okay, I need to go pay respect, do the thing, see what's
Yeah.
there, listen to the stories. And so it actually gave me a little bit better of an understanding when I got there. And there's a whole room where there's survivors who tell their stories. It's recordings of them telling their stories. And it is heart-wrenching and
Yes.
terrifying and terrible. But also they were the survivors who were sharing, right? And so so interesting. So interesting and so much of a, and because I read that one, I actually read two others. I think it was two others, at least one other. I read The Tattooist of Auschwitz, and then I read read a story called Silka. And so
Hmm.
that kind of, they cross a little bit, but she's in like a different space after this has happened. Again, another one that I recommend. I gave it to my mom. I don't think she's going to read it. I do not blame her because it's heavy.
Yeah.
It's not an easy summer read, but it's again one
No.
that had such a profound effect on the way I understood things. That's the reason I wish I could read it again. Not because it made me feel happy, not because it made me like, you know what I mean, but it changed the way that I see things, the way that I see people, the way
Yeah.
that I understood certain events. It changed all of that. And that's why I wish I could read that one again for the first time. Because I will tell you, it's
Interesting.
weird to say, but I was 100% a different person before I read that book than after I read that book.
Yeah, yeah. Like you can't come away from something like that without being
No,
changed. And I
no.
think I can read stuff like that if I know it's fake
Fair.
because my humanness doesn't want to believe that there's that kind
Yeah.
of evil
Yeah.
or ugliness in the world. So I think that's the hard part is I'm like, this really happened. Like,
Yeah. It
and
sucks.
it, right? Like the overarching theme, but you said something that I was like, oh, that makes sense because there's good to be found within pockets of time. Like there's love, there's hope, there's stories of people like this, within the greater scheme of like evilness. But like maybe that will give me a little bit of hope too
Right. But again, if
to
it's
try
not,
again.
and
But
it's not one that I will say, like if you decided you had gotten a couple of pages in and you're like, I can't. I just can't. I wouldn't blame you. Right? Because there were
right.
times where I was reading it and I was like, I don't, like, I have to take a couple days of a break. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? It's one of those, and I don't
Yes.
read many books where I'm like, oh, I need a break. I needed a break, which sucks
Yeah.
to say because I had the luxury of a break. When somebody going
Yeah.
through that doesn't have the luxury of, like, you know what I mean? And so it's things
Yeah.
that, and that's what I'm saying when I say, like, it changed the way I think about things. Because previous to that, I would be like, okay, it's a book, like, just put it down. But the fact that I had one, the audacity, and two, the ability to take said break
That
from
you
something that
could
was
walk
hard and
away from
uncomfortable
it
and whatever,
with it
definitely
being hard.
changed,
Yes.
right? Definitely changed the way that I like look at other people and the way that I think about struggle and the way that I think about the experience of humans and whatever that is. And this all just got very heavy for a podcast. But as we're talking about this, I'm like, this is real life shit right here. But it's that kind of stuff where that's why it changed who I am and what the way that I think about things, and that's why it's a would love to read again for the first time, but also like I won't read that book again, right? I
Yeah.
won't read it again, but it's one that when somebody's like, "Oh, have you read this?" I'm like, "Yes," and I will tell you all the reasons because I can't tell you I necessarily love like I loved it, but I didn't love it in the way that you love a book.
Right. Right. It's not
So
the
it's
usual
very
way
weird,
that you would
right?
describe it.
It's so weird to say that. Like I loved it, but
Yes.
also I hated it for all the right
But
reasons.
as you say that, like, I think that's what makes a book recommendable.
Hmm.
That is what ties you to a book is it changes something in your world. It changes something in your mind. It changes you. And I think those are the stories that stay with us
100%.
because of it. Not necessarily because we were, excited and like, yay, kind of thing. Like, it is the ones that make the most impact on us.
I think so.
Those are the ones that stick with us. And that's
Yes.
probably why.
Probably. But it just, like I said, it's one. Again, it's interesting that I have two historical fictions on here, right? Um, because it's not, I would assume that I would have mentioned a fantasy book of some sort, and I did not.
I didn't know.
So I
No, they don't
surprised
touch your
myself.
soul the way. They're good books.
They're great books. They're
They're
fun.
good things to get lost in, but they don't touch your soul the way these do.
No. I think that I save them for a future episode where they are better poised, right?
Yes. Yes.
They're better poised because they're usually in the scope of something different, but we'll get to that another time.
We got time. We got
Right?
plenty of time.
And it's hard. It was hard to pick just a couple. I love that we both picked three, but it was hard to pick just a couple that because there are so many books where I'm like, I'd love to just like start over to like not have had this experience and get to have it all over again because I loved it so
But
much.
think about all the books. Like, look, all the books
The
that
books on the
you
shelf.
might have that experience with.
Exactly.
It could
So
keep happening. Just because it can't happen with your favorite book doesn't mean it won't ever happen again. And that's why we read.
it is why we read, and it's why we need everyone else's recommendations of like, what book would you read again? Like, if you were given the option, and it's interesting to be like, oh, this is my favorite book, versus like, I wish I could have this experience one more time. What is
Yes.
your would read again for the first time book? Because I would like to create a list of those so that when I go to the bookstore next time, I know what else I'm looking for. Because I'm starting to
Yes.
find like the same books over and over again. I'm like, all right, we're
Yeah.
getting to, I think people get into like a reading slump sometimes where they're like, oh, it's because we're seeing all the same things. I have so
We're
many
seeing
books that I
all
can
the same
read. I'm
things.
not in a slump, but I think I'm in a buying slump because I've gone to the bookstore twice the last two times that I went and I didn't buy a single book.
Yeah,
I
because you've
bought, my kids
seen all
bought books.
those.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I didn't
So
buy
you're like,
anything. And I was like,
what else is
something
out
is
there?
wrong. But
What else
also,
is out there?
pat on the back for me for not just buying to buy.
There
I
you
didn't see
go.
anything I wanted. And I was like, I have plenty of things to read at home, right? It's like we have chicken at home. We have books at home and I didn't need an extra.
Yes. Yes. I love
So,
that.
yes. Please share with us either Threads or Instagram or, oh, our Facebook group. We have a Facebook page, a Facebook group now.
Yes. Join
That's
our
right.
Facebook group. Talk
Right.
all about the books.
Yes, we have, it's a little book club. We've got the Facebook page for, the general things and the conversation, but then we've also got the book club. All the links will be down in the below, where you can join and have a little bit deeper of a conversation. It's where we're going to share some other fun things that we're planning. But both of those things are available on the Facebook, the face space.
Yes. And we can talk all about your favorite books that we haven't read yet, that we
Exactly.
need to read so that you can experience it for the first time through our eyes.
Exactly.
That'd be
We
a
should
fun
start.
topic.
We should start a thread on that. We'll start a thread. We'll start a thread for those recommendations.
Yes. Don't forget to like and subscribe.
Push it to buttons
Push up the buttons.
because we're back next week with something else. So until then,
Woo!
happy reading. It was great to have you join us for today's chat. If you'd like to continue the conversation, provide a recommendation, or simply say hi, pop over to Instagram at wine.read.wine. Also, if you're the review type person, we'd love for you to subscribe and leave us an honest review on your favorite podcast player. Or leave us a comment on our YouTube channel. We'll see you on the next episode. Happy reading!